GoForThe2.com in with the conference championship predictions. Going to be key about 3 games. This is what I'm looking at early. Going to break down about 5 picks in this video, and then obviously all the selections for the conference championships we're going to cover on College Football Full Circle, Monday through Friday, Sirius Channel 159, 1 to 2 p.m. Eastern, and then College Football Today this Saturday, 3-hour kickoff show. We're going to go through every game, conference championship guests. We're also going to go talk about the coaching changes. I mean, news today and over the last 24 hours. Lincoln Riley, obviously, to USC, but now Brian Kelly supposedly going to be named Tuesday the head coach of the LSU Tigers. What happens with Notre Dame? Does Luke Fickell take that job? Does Matt Campbell possibly get mentioned to coach the Fighting Irish in 2022? There's a lot of moving parts and a lot of uncertainty surrounding the coaching vacancies throughout the landscape of college football. So we're going to cover that as well. How does that affect some of these potential maybe conference championships, but more importantly, the bowl matchups over the next 3 weeks? Stay with us. We have you covered for kickoff and the bowl season straight through the national championship game. If you want the video portion of College Football Today, that's always up on sportsgrid.com as the show is simultaneously cast on Sirius Channel 159, so you can check that out. Let's jump right into the Big 12 Championship marquee battle. It's a rematch. Oak State versus Baylor. Line open up. It looks like right in the area of about 6, depending upon the book. They immediately bet it down. Now in some books, anywhere from 5.5 to 5, maybe 4.5, depending upon the state, the location. It's a marquee battle. I mean, both teams mirror each other. I was against Baylor last week. Shappen, the backup quarterback, got the start for Bohannon. Whether Bohannon started or not, I still bought into Texas Tech. They thought they were the right side. Started slow last week. They were down 10-0. That line ballooned up in game to 25.5 in the second quarter. But you saw Sonny Cumbie, that team maintain their composure. Donovan Smith with a solid second half effort, threw for over 165 yards, 2 touchdowns. But I was more impressed with the Texas Tech defense, led by Colin Schooler, the former Arizona linebacker. He's the heart and soul of that defense. They held Abram Smith, Treston Ebner in check enough to lose that ball game by 3 points. Now Baylor goes on the road, obviously, to Arlington. This is a marquee battle. We saw Oak State step up, trailed by 9 points. They forced a turnover. Spencer Sanders made the touchdown run. The whole complexity of that ball game and momentum changed in the last 10 minutes. Caleb Williams got his team in a position to strike the upset, but in the end, it was the front seven of Oklahoma State that closed the door. More importantly, the physicality of the offense and defensive lines of Oklahoma State wore down Oklahoma at critical junctures. They were able to run the football with Jaylen Warren. That defense was opportunistic. They bent, didn't break, and I think that's a really key to this matchup with Baylor, but more importantly, a testament to what Mike Gundy has built in Stillwater this year. It wasn't just this game against Oklahoma. Let's not forget Oklahoma had won 6 straight by 18.3 points per game. But just look at the body of work for Oklahoma State this year. It started on the road as a 4.5-point dog against Boise State. They trailed that matchup 20-7, had the mental resolve and composure to pull that ball game out 21-20. Granted, I understand the fumble that was called back. That obviously changed all of Oklahoma State's season, but they got out of Boise with a victory. They then followed that up with another gutty effort against Baylor. That was a ball game that was 17-14 for much of the fourth quarter. They got a 2-minute touchdown drive right in the end to close the door and cover that 3.5-point spread. They did jump out 14-0. They had a 17-14 lead over the Baylor Bears and Jerry Bohannon and wore them down in terms of the trenches in that ball game. And I think when you look at this battle, Oak State and Baylor, both teams mimic themselves each other. They're mirror carbon copies of each other. It's just that, in my opinion, Oklahoma State has better personnel and better talent, even at the quarterback position. I give the inside edge right now to Spencer Sanders over Jerry Bohannon in this matchup. I just think that Oak State, Tay Martin, Presley, those wide receivers, while maybe they're not elite, they are experienced. They've stepped up in critical situations, and I have more confidence in Oak State's offense to score points in this matchup than I do Baylor. I know Baylor has two solid running backs, Treston Ebner, Abram Smith. Last year, Iowa State, depending upon when you got it, that 5.5, 6-point number, they bet it down to 5 right before game time. Oklahoma did cover, get the win depending upon when you bet Iowa State last year. Think it could be a carbon copy of last year's game, 27-21 in there, but I still give the edge to Oklahoma State. I think they're the more complete team. I think the front seven of Oklahoma State can wear down Baylor's offensive line. You saw Texas Tech get some pressure on Chapin last week. Texas Tech was the more physical team in the second half, didn't wear down, and that's the matchup here. It's the offensive line of Baylor going up against that front seven, led by Lacey and by those linebackers of Oklahoma State. I give the edge to Mike Gundy and the crew. I think they're a focused team. One of the top third down defenses in all of college football. That offense came through when it needed them the most. Oak State does cover this number. I think it's about a touchdown that they get this victory. Won't be easy. I don't think any of these conference games will be easy, but I do give the inside edge to Oklahoma State, and if they win, they do go to the college football playoff. I don't care if it's Cincinnati or Oak State. In my opinion, bigger body of work, more quality wins, and their one loss came to Iowa State as a 7.5 point dog, but they lost by 3, 27-24 on a key fourth down that you could make the argument that Tay Martin did get that first down in Ames, Iowa. Let's look at the Big Ten championship game. What can you say about Michigan? They stepped up. They made a statement. Hassan Haskins in that offense, 169 rushing yards on the ground, 5 rushing touchdowns. They took the game to Ohio State in the trenches, made C.J. Stroud in that offense completely one-dimensional. Aiden Hutchinson stepped up, 3 sacks, 13 sacks on the year, breaks the sack total record set by Woodley and those playmakers for the Michigan Wolverines that had 12. I mean, dynamic effort by Aiden Hutchinson. Now they face an Iowa team 10-2 overall. They were left for dead in Lincoln, 21-9 in the fourth quarter. Petras comes off the bench. He rallies his team. They get the victory, 28-21. It's basically a pick-em over the Nebraska Cornhuskers. Now they go into this battle, still one of the top turnover margins in all of the nation, plus 11 heading into this ball game. But it comes down to these teams played a couple of years ago. It was a 10-3 matchup in the Big House. Again, that front seven of Michigan got to the physical offensive line of Iowa. They put them into predictable third down situations, and I'm still not sold on the Iowa offense. Petras is good. Padilla is good. They're not elite. In my opinion, they haven't stepped up in a big game. I don't call last week against Nebraska a big game, even though Nebraska's played everybody well, a 3-9 football team. The one big game that they did have later in the year against Wisconsin, they lost that ball game convincingly. More importantly, they were left for dead. If Sean Clifford doesn't get hurt in that battle, Petras and the crew lose that ball game yet convincingly. In my opinion, they trailed 17-3. So you got to put things into perspective when we're talking about the Iowa Hawkeyes. Again, both teams mimic each other, but Cade McNamara, in my opinion, has the edge at the quarterback position. I still give the edge of Harbaugh over Ferentz in this spot. Teams playing with house money. Aiden Hutchinson, the leader of this defense right now. Give me Michigan laying a big number. And I know that Big Ten games traditionally favors the underdog. Let's look at last year. It was basically an 18.5, 20-point underdog Northwestern. They trailed and lost that ball game 22-20. 2 years ago, it was Wisconsin as an underdog, led at half, lost in the second half, but did cover that number. Traditionally, Big Ten underdogs cover these spreads in championship games, but when you have two teams that mimic each other, you have to look at quarterback play. Edge goes to Michigan. Coach, all right, we'll give it even. You give the slight edge to Jim Harbaugh, but at the end of the day, who on Iowa scares you outside of Tyler Goodson? That's the concern. If you're going to back Iowa in this ball game, catching 10.5, they're going to have to score some points. I don't see it up against that front seven. I think Michigan covers the 10.5, but more importantly, also like the under 43.5 in this ball game. That's one of the best plays on the board as well. Under 43.5, Iowa and Michigan in the Big Ten championship game. Let's look at the SEC championship game. Marquee battle. You have top-ranked Georgia coming off a win and a cover over Georgia Tech. They've now won 4 straight over the Yellow Jackets. Entering that ball game, they had won 3 straight over Georgia Tech by 100 total points, or 33.3 points per game. Dominated. Stetson Bennett, 255 through the air, 4 touchdowns, no interceptions. That defense held Georgia Tech completely under 200 yards, made them completely one-dimensional in the ball game, shut them down on third down conversions, only allowed about 28% of Georgia Tech's third down opportunities, and that's going to be a key matchup going to Atlanta. We know that Georgia's been an underdog before. Now they're going to be the hunted. They're the top dog. This line originally opened up at 4.5. It ballooned now after last week's game to 6.5, potentially 7. Alabama's not looked good all year long. You want to talk about the last 2 games against Arkansas, put up 400 yards on them. Auburn, this was an Auburn team that lost to South Carolina 21-17. This was still a South Carolina team that got abused by Clemson last week, put up a 30 spot and was completely one-dimensional with Jason Brown at the helm. So how good is that Auburn defense? Was it an aberration, or did they really find something to slow down Bryce Young and that offense heading into this ball game? I think it's a little bit of both. I think there could have been a little bit of look ahead for Alabama, even though it was the Iron Bowl. And secondly, they didn't want to show a whole lot before the SEC championship. But when you look at Bryce Young on the road or on a neutral field this year, let's go through the games. Florida, he won that ball game 31-29, didn't get the cover. Late 18.5 against Texas A&M, lost the ball game outright 41-38. Struggled in other games. Obviously, the Auburn game on the Plains did not cover that ball game. Now they're catching 6.5 points. This game comes down to 2 factors: the speed on the perimeter for Alabama. Those wide receivers, John Mechie, Latu, the tight end, Jamison Williams, they're going to try and stretch Georgia's defense over the top. But it's not just going to be a 5-wide type of scheme and just chuck it all over the yard. I think what they're going to do to neutralize Georgia's front seven is you're going to see Mechie, you're going to see Jamison Williams on a lot of screens over the middle. They're going to allow Georgia's front seven to collapse on Bryce Young. That's going to open up the slant game. That's going to open up the middle screen. And that's where those playmakers can create one-on-one opportunities up against the Georgia defense. Let's be honest. As much as you love Georgia, and I've been a Georgia fan since 1980, at the end of the day, they haven't faced an elite wide receiver core. Clemson with Justin Ross at the beginning of the year was inconsistent. Florida, we thought, had a good offense, but they did not stretch or challenge Georgia's defense in any capacity with Emory Jones or Anthony Richardson. Bryce Young, as bad as he's been or inconsistent, still has the ability to throw for over 500 yards in this ball game. And from a speed perspective, Alabama is one of the top speed teams in terms of all the SEC. So that's going to be the matchup. I mean, if you're just looking at the Georgia defense going up against speed teams this year, you can't see it. There's not one game where Georgia's been challenged vertically. They're going to be challenged vertically in this ball game. I think that's the difference as well. I think they're up against it here. I know Georgia's the more physical, maybe offensive, defensive lines, but look for a lot of motion in this ball game as well. That's another factor that could create one-on-one matchups and force Bryce Young to maybe break down coverage and hit big plays over the top of the secondary. The way they utilize Mechie in space, they utilize him in terms of fly sweeps, they utilize him in terms of motion. Georgia's going to have to adjust from that. And I think that's where that can create mismatch problems for the Georgia secondary. So I'm taking Alabama plus the 6.5 points. I think this is a very close ball game. In the end, though, I feel like Bryce Young and the Alabama Crimson Tide knock off the top-ranked Georgia Bulldogs in this matchup. You go back to that ball game last year in Tuscaloosa, Jalen Waddle, same type of thing. 90-yard bomb over the top, Mac Jones. It was created by one-on-one matchups, motion that allowed that one-on-one opportunity for the post pattern for Jalen Waddle. Stetson Bennett struggled against that defense last year, could be much of the same in Atlanta in this ball game. Give me Alabama plus the 6.5, but the 50 and a hook total, I think, is the way to go too. Like over this matchup, over 50 and a half in the SEC championship game. Those are the 5 picks. Oak State minus the 4, 4.5, or even 5. Michigan minus the 10.5, and the under 43.5. Alabama plus the 6.5, and over 50.5 in the SEC championship game. Your 5 selections. I'll see you during the week. Have a great week, everyone. It's been a fantastic year. Thank you for the support and follow. See you on Saturday. College Football Today.